Hello there, welcome along. It's the 4th of May, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our Renew Every Morning series. And today our subject is fear. And even when I say the word fear, there's something inside of us that goes, oh yes, we must be talking about religion. Well, of course, I'm going to talk to you about something very, very different. And I'm going to talk to you from a verse from the Proverbs, and this is Proverbs chapter 9 and verse 10. And here's what it says. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. All right, a classic verse. Everybody knows it, right? So it's not a new verse. But I think what we do need to do is perhaps renew this verse, because this is one of those verses that just, to me, seems to trip us up and get us into such a lot of difficulty. And so here's our renew. Now, before we go any further in this renew, let me offer you this idea, because this I think is key, not only to you understanding how we might be able to engage with this particular verse, but more broadly, how we engage with the Bible in its totality. And that is this. There is one thing that we need to just nail down, and that's the nature and the immutable, the unchangeable nature and character of God. What is it? God is love. Now that we know, right? We know that God is love. And so if we can hold on to that and bank that for a second, let's do a build. So if we know for sure that God is love, which is something that we'd all recognize and accept, what else do we know about love? Well, one of the things we know about love, we know from 1 John 5, and where we read, or 1 John 4, forgive me, where we read that perfect love casts out fear. For he who fears cannot, note that, cannot be perfected in love. So it is impossible to be perfected into love, God is love, when there is the presence of fear. So when we're reading a verse that says the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, that's complicated because it can't therefore mean what we think it means, right? That makes no sense. So there's no fear in love. Remember that. It's such an important point. So the good news is if you find yourself afraid of God, then the happy news is it's not the God of the Bible you're afraid of. It may be some made-up God, maybe some invention of somebody else who they masquerade as God and even use the Bible to pass that person, that idea off as God. But that isn't God, because there is no fear in God. That is an absolute guaranteed acid test that if you are afraid, then let me promise you, it isn't God you're talking about. So what are we talking about when we use this word fear then? Because it's obviously there for a reason. What does it mean? Well, in Hebrew, the word is yirah, and it's a lovely word. It doesn't mean being scared. It means standing in awe. So now, do you see the distinction? Being in awe of God is the beginning of wisdom. Now that I can understand. That makes sense. Being in awe of God is the beginning of wisdom. Okay, yes, I can see that. Now, do you see the distinction? Because that's, as I say, it's not being scared. It's about this sort of holy reverence. If you like, it's the kind of terrifying, wonderful realization that you're in the presence of love. That's the point. That's the point. And this kind of fear isn't the enemy of love, not at all. It's the soil it grows in. And when we stand in awe of God, think of those songs you sing. I stand in awe of you. And I can remember just filling the whole room, filling sometimes when I hear that sung beautifully. And this is really what we're talking about. When we stand in awe of God, when we enlarge our vision of God, we immediately shrink our concerns about everything else. Everything else gets right-sized, proper-sized. And so here's the simple takeaway, I guess, from today's renew. It's very simple. The fear of the Lord isn't fear of what God might do to you if. It's the awe of what God has already done and the potential of since. It's a different space. So, if I may, just sit down, let it touch you again, trust in the flow, and be renewed. And just let me finish by just once more reading that verse to you, but reading it correctly to you. Being in awe of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And not only is it the beginning of wisdom, maybe it even takes us into that knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. And remember, that's not knowing about him. That's about knowing him. And you can't know somebody that you're in fear of. No. Knowledge and that kind of knowing is an intimate knowing. And that is an intimate knowing that occurs only where there is no fear. May you be renewed in that. Great to see you again. Bye.